I think this is part 6 of my plow video, which isn't very plowish yet because I can't get this darn tractor to run right. Should have done this in the previous video, but now I have half a clue about this carburetor. So I'm going to take this carburetor off the tractor. Removal of the carburetor from the tractor is quite easy. First, it's removal of the air assembly, and that's pretty much consists of 2 screws right there, which bolt right to the carburetor at this point here and this point here. And then on this top bracket here, which I've also removed, there's a little bracket that's right here, and that holds the air filter on too. Next step is to pull this plate off here, and this essentially is bolted on with 2 bolts right here, and its purpose works the choke throttle mechanism, and it is attached to the governor, but we don't need to remove it, so we're just going to set it aside and not have to change any of those settings. The next is to remember is I've got to remove the linkage of the carburetor to the governor, disconnect the fuel line, which I'll probably do at the fuel filter since that's traditionally where I disconnect it, and I'll catch any falling fuel, and then we'll bring this up to the bench. The model on this engine is a VM100, which was very hard. I could not get a kit for it at my local Napa. There are places on the internet, but who cares. So here are the primary points that we're looking for. Here's the bowl. This is the main needle jet. This goes all the way up inside the carburetor, and this is what we need to adjust. We need to take it out, make sure it's clean. This is our base idle screw, essentially. And then this other screw that you see right here, this screw here is the idle screw. And according to the diagrams in the service manual, we set this one first and this one second. But what we're going to do for this video is we need to pull this one out, we need to pull this one out, we're going to drop the bowl, and we're going to spray and make sure all the orifices are clean, make sure all the O-rings are nice and pretty. Everything on the front and back side looks good. Our choke, it looks fine. And our throttle looks fine, and then we're going to, hopefully put everything back together, throw it on the tractor, and see what we can come up with. Going to be taking apart the primary needle first, and this is our I guess you call high load needle. Here's my primary needle that goes up into the carburetor, and we're going to clean this. And my O-ring is toast, so I have a package of O-rings that I'm going to get, and we're going to replace this little guy. I don't have a bowl gasket. They say, oh, never take it off without the gasket, but we'll be alright, I'm sure. And there's a little bit of gunk inside there, so we're going to wipe all that clean. Probably some remnant water from my gas tank. This needle valve is a low idle screw. It should be the same type of valve or needle that the big one is, the big high idle or high throttle. I.e. the needle, the spring, a little brass collar to keep the spring from hurting the rubber O-ring. There we go. There's the spring and the brass. My O-ring stayed in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and flood these passages with cleaner. I got some carburetor. Oh yuck! Yeah, I'm going to take some cleaner. I'm going to wash this whole thing up. I don't think I've got an O-ring small enough, to be honest with you. Usually this is, I bought this when I did the fuel injectors on my Buick Regal, and my smallest ones are not small enough, so I'll have to get a kit. So we'll have to deal with what we have for now. And but we don't have to take the carburetor off to at any time change these little rings here. So we'll still do everything together, but that might be a problem. Should be able to flood these orifices with cleaner. They should pour out of the carburetor, since this is the bowl, this is where all the fuel comes from. Oh, yum. That is icky. This also will help with the runnability of the unit. The importance of this unit here is the point of the screw, the point here, because it's a fine metering valve essentially, and so it needs to be as clean as we can get it. Which is why getting new ones is always nice, because A, you don't have to clean them, and B, like I'm looking at this one, you won't be able to see it in the camera, I'm sure, but it's a little rough around the top there, and in theory it should be perfectly smooth. This little guy here, I could actually buy. He was the only part available for this carburetor. It's a little float needle valve. And all it has to do is fight back the gravity of fuel coming from the tank, although some machines do have fuel pumps, depending on where their tank is. Mine's just gravity feed. And I don't think there are any issues with this, and it's nice and clean. But it is one of the parts that you can get for this machine. So now it operates as it should. Now notice that the bowl has a dent in the bottom of it. And that accommodates the float here. The float wants to be able to sink all the way down, so you want to put the flat part, I should say the deepest part of the float, the bowl, where the deepest part of the possible float can go. Make your hole nice and square. That gasket looks happy, so we shall finger tight it in, and then we'll give it just a snug with the wrench. And I can feel it squeeze against the bottom. There we go. Squeeze against the bottom of the carburetor, hopefully making a nice seal. And this is sealed, so our gas compartment's sealed again. And you can hear it, jumping around in there. Next, let's put our main valve in. First, we'll do our horrible O-ring, which we'll have to do for now. Our clean needle valve. The instructions in the service manual said seat it, finger tight, and then back it off 1.5. And it just seated. We're going to back it off 1.5 turns. So there's a half, there's a half, there's a half. Okay, so that one's set. Baseline. We're going to tweak it once we get the tractor engine warm. Next one, we have our low idle valve right here. So that's seated, and we're going to back it off 1. So that's a half a turn and a half a turn. So in theory it's set. Now, this idle adjustment, all it is literally a mechanical connection. There's a screw and there's the throttle. And we're just going to back it up right now. The touch is there, so we're going to go 1 there. So now that's our base idle set, and that is pretty darn closed. But just enough, hopefully, for it to run. So our adjustments are set. It's clean enough, as clean as we can get it. So that's pretty good. This thing is running great. Under load, I took it for a spin in the snow. It's really nice. You can control it fine, and since we're going to be using it for plowing, it's going to be under load, so that's great. So we're good. So next step should be we'll start working on the plow a little bit.